Hi everyone. So I have conferenced with a few people about their Girl Interrupted paper drafts. So I just want to go ahead and talk through the assignment with you, both through the prompt and through the rubric. And I'm going to take into mind some of the things I have encountered and discussed with student drafts so far. So if you don't have it already, I would ask that you go ahead and pull up both the Girl Interrupted paper prompt and the Girl Interrupted grading rubric so that we can talk these things through. I have mine right over here, so if you see me looking away, that is what I'm looking at. Okay, so I'm just going to read the prompt just to get started. Keeping in mind the theory that we have read in class, compose a 2 to 3 page paper comparing Girl Interrupted, the written memoir, and Girl Interrupted, the movie. Using the Smith & Watson rating to guide you, choose 1 to 2 differences between the book and the movie that are particularly important to a feminist intersectional analysis of these works. So one thing to keep in mind is this means that you are looking at the differences in the book and the movie. That is what you want to structure your paper around and structure your thesis around, is 1 or 2 of those differences, not 1 or 2 of the topics in the Smith & Watson text. That's more just to help get you thinking about what differences you might notice and how they might be significant. I gave you some guiding questions. If you're feeling stuck in terms of trying to identify differences that would lend themselves to a feminist intersectional analysis, you can use these guiding questions to help you. If you decide to write about one of them, just choose one, don't choose them all. You won't be able to fit it. You are, of course, welcome. And if you feel comfortable doing a feminist intersectional analysis, I would encourage you to try to develop a thesis of your own that isn't necessarily dependent upon these guiding questions. But that's really up to you and your comfort level with feminist intersectional analysis. I'm going to skip those because they don't have to be part of the assignment, but they're there to help you if you need them. Paper requirements. It does need to be 2 to 3 pages in length, not including the works cited page. 12-point Times New Roman font, double-spaced 1-inch margins. Keep in mind that I'm grading these electronically, so I can see all of the formatting really easily. That 2 to 3 page length limit is something I've been asked about. That is a strict page limit, so I would ask that you stick to that. Part of what I'm asking you to do with this assignment is to really think about your argument and think about what kind of argument you can do in 2 to 3 pages. So part of your assignment here is to be thinking about the page limit that you have and making sure that you develop and tailor your argument to that page length. Of course, remember to centralize issues of gender, intersectionality, and feminism in the paper. The easiest way to do that is to make sure that your thesis statement includes a feminist analysis. Because your thesis statement is the guide for the rest of your paper, if your thesis statement includes a strong feminist analysis, then that will help you to make sure that you have a feminist analysis throughout the paper. Because as you work on the paper, you should be continually checking back in with your thesis statement to make sure that the body of your paper aligns with your thesis argument. Your paper must include a clear and specific argument that is supported by evidence. This argument should be distilled into a thesis statement which must be underlined. Please make sure that your thesis statement is only 1 sentence long, that that sentence is underlined, and that it is found at the end of your introductory paragraph. That is very important. Remember that the tone of this paper is more formal than your journal entries. So think of this as a formal analytical paper, not a reflexive paper. So you should not have I statements. You should be writing and citing in a formal style. There are handouts available on Carmen, multiple handouts about paper writing tips, thesis statement, how to know if your thesis statement is good, and paper structure to help you in writing a formal paper with a formal tone. So keep in mind you have those tools. If you have questions about what it means to have a formal tone, you can also email me. Please include 4 to 5 direct quotes from at least 3 different sources as evidence for your argument. These sources do not have to be sources from the class. They can be, and it's certainly fine if all of your sources come from the class, but if you need to, look for outside evidence to support your argument that you're making, that's fine, and that's part of the job of this paper, is that if you're making factual statements, you need to back them up. So for example, if you were making a statement about how many women are admitted to psychiatric hospitals versus how many men are, you would need to do some research into that and provide evidence. It shouldn't take long. You have the internet at your fingertips, but you do need to do that research. If you use sources outside of the class, they need to be scholarly sources. So they should not be blogs, for example. They should not be like entertainment magazines, that sort of thing. A kind of basic rule of thumb in terms of what is or is not a scholarly source. For scholarly sources, journal entries, like academic journal entries, are fine. Anything from the class is fine. Really well-renowned news organizations are okay. So for example, NPR would be okay, National Public Radio. The New York Times would be okay. But things like Newsweek or the Daily Mail, those sorts of things are not scholarly. So news sources that have a long history and that are well renowned as doing responsible news reporting, those would be okay. And in looking at websites, typically if it ends in a .edu or a .org, usually those are okay. Other websites, it really depends. It can vary a lot. So if you have any questions about if something is a scholarly source, you can, of course, go ahead and just email me the link or email me the source, and I'll look at it and I'll let you know. So keep in mind that you can use outside sources for this paper. You do need to cite your sources. Oh, and one more note on sources. Do not use Wikipedia. Do not use like a dictionary. Don't use a dictionary definition. If you absolutely, for some reason, have to reference a dictionary, it should be the Oxford American English Dictionary. I don't want to see Wikipedia cited. What you can use Wikipedia for is that oftentimes at the end of a Wikipedia article, they will provide sources that they have used, and those might be scholarly, but don't use Wikipedia itself. You do need to cite all of your sources for the paper, both in text and with a works cited page. Use whichever citation format you are most comfortable with. I am familiar with them all, so if you want to use MLA, that's fine. If you want to use APA, that's fine. If you want to use Chicago, that's fine. Just make sure that you're sticking to the same citation style throughout the paper. And there is a link on the paper prompt handout that will give you information if you're unclear on any of your citations. Excuse me. And do remember that you need to cite both paraphrase and direct quotes. I already posted the digital feedback options. If you want me to do a read through of a full draft and give you feedback on a full draft, you have to have that full draft submitted to the Carmen Dropbox by tomorrow, and you need to email me a time when we can chat on Google, Skype, or by phone. Email me a number of times that you would be available to do that. I do ask that if you are having me read a full draft, we also set aside a time to actually dialogue about the feedback that I'm going to give you. If you want to send me a partial draft, that's fine. I'll do digital feedback on that. If you're sending me a partial draft, I would say, or like a thesis statement or an outline, I would say have that to me either in the Dropbox or by email no later than the 7th for a partial draft. That will give me time to look at it and give you time to revise. If you do submit any partial or full drafts to the Dropbox, please also email me as well and let me know that they're there and label them clearly as drafts. Also remember that you always have the OSU Writing Center to help you with assistance on the paper. You can even book appointments with them online, so their address is on the paper handout as well. Okay, now what I want to do is just quickly talk through the rubric to make sure you have everything there. So it equals 100 points. 10 points are making sure that you fulfill the prompt, so that means discussing both versions of Girl Interrupted, setting up an analytical comparison between the two different forms of it, and using theory and concepts that we have read in order to compare the works. Clarity of argument. Okay, so this means having a very clear thesis that is at the end of the introductory paragraph and that is underlined, and then having a clear and focused analysis that follows that thesis. So that means that the body section of your paper should all very clearly connect back to the thesis. So when you are proofing, make sure that each paragraph you have has a clear topic sentence that is identifiably connected to your thesis argument. Again, I would highly suggest, if you haven't already, looking through the handouts to help you with formal paper writing. That will even help you with things like knowing what body paragraphs do and how to develop them and how to connect them to your thesis. Use of evidence. So this is not just the direct quotes that you'll have, but also that you're using examples from the texts, that you're using concepts in class to really back up your analysis, that you are providing clear and specific evidence to prove whatever your analysis is, whatever your thesis argument is. Direct quotes. Okay, so you need to have at least 4 to 5 direct quotes, again, from at least 3 different sources. And you need to make sure that those quotes really connect to the analysis and that they support the analysis and that you contextualize them. They shouldn't be just dropped into the paper. Never assume that your reader knows what you're thinking about how a quote connects to your argument. You need to do that work for them. Also, and this is covered on the paper writing tips handout, never start or end a paragraph with a quote. Always make sure that you are starting and ending your paragraphs with your own words to both connect it to whatever came before or whatever will come next, but also to give some context about how that quote connects to your argument. Feminist analysis, you need to make sure that you are centralizing gender and the differential impacts of culture, historical events, and ideologies as they operate in women's lives. So basically that you are centralizing gender and thinking about the context in which gender operates in your argument and in the narratives. Intersectional analysis. In addition to thinking about gender, you also need to consider the workings and impact of other identity categories that intersect with gender, such as race, class, or religion. So that means not just thinking about these things parallel, but thinking about, for example, if you're thinking about socioeconomic status, how does that really interact with gender? Sorry if you hear that background noise. My dog just found some food and she's eating it. And then mechanics. Really using proper formal language and proper grammar. Again, formal tone is something that the Writing Center can help with, but this is also something that will really be helped by looking at the paper writing tips worksheet and also making sure that you are including proper citations throughout the paper and a works cited page. Okay. I would really recommend continuing to check in with the paper assignment prompt and the grading rubric as you work on this. Again, if you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to email me if you're not clear on what the assignment or what the rubric is asking you for. Okay, I look forward to reading your papers.